Hello everyone, welcome to the Old Man and the Read. My name is Jerry. Today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite writers, Denis Johnson. Denis Johnson was an American novelist and short story writer. He was born in 1949 and died in the year 2017. He's just wrote some really exceptional books, mostly having to do with the dark underbelly of society. They were dark and dismal and a little bit gritty stories, but just exceptionally written. And I would say most of his books were just exceptional. There's a couple that were a little more iffy, and then one I have to classify as just bad. But anyway, I'll show you the books I've read and say a little bit about them. The first book he published in 1983 is Angels, and this is the story that follows a young woman named Jamie. She's taken her 2 young kids and is running away from her abusive husband. She's on a Greyhound bus and she meets an ex-con named Bill Houston. The two form a bit of a relationship, a very dysfunctional relationship, and it's just really a rough and gritty story that ends in disaster. In 1985, he published Fiscadoro, and this is about a young boy named Fiscadoro, and he's seeking clarinet lessons, but this is taking place in a dark and dystopian post-apocalyptic world in the Florida Keys. It takes place about 60 years after a nuclear holocaust, and I thought the brilliance of the book was Johnson's ability to just paint a very real possibility in the dreariness of the world they're in. In 1991, he published Resuscitation of a Hanged Man, and this is the story of a very troubled, slightly paranoid and mentally unstable man named Leonard English. He's a survivor of attempted suicide by hanging who has moved to Prince Providencetown to take a job with a radio station. He works as a part-time detective and eventually falls in love with a lesbian, and you can guess how that ends up. In 1992, he published Jesus' Son. This is just really an exceptional collection of connected short stories. Just brilliantly written by Johnson, and I think that's where his real forte is in short stories. That this is a book that, if you've ever wondered what it would be like to associate or hang around some drug-addicted, alcoholic, petty criminals who are leading aimless lives but don't really want to have to associate with them, then read the book. This will put you right in place with them. In 1997, he published Already Dead. This follows a man named Nelson Fairchild. He's a marijuana grower, and he's hoping to inherit his father's property and timber. However, his father has left Nelson's wife, Winona, as the person to inherit the property at his death. So Nelson has decided to hire a man to kill his wife, Winona. In the year 2000, he published The Name of the World. This is the story of a 53-year-old man whose wife and daughter had been killed in a car accident a few years previously. His life is just in a total tailspin, and he's about to lose his teaching position because he has not gained tenure yet. But he's just indifferent to it, really. He becomes infatuated with a young girl named Flower Cannon. They form kind of a curious friendship, but it never actually goes beyond that. In the year 2007, he published Tree of Smoke. This is about a young man who becomes a CIA agent. He's following his uncle's footsteps. His uncle is a colonel and a CIA operative. He first goes to work for his uncle, cataloging information that he realizes is pretty much useless, but he does it. And then his uncle sends him to Vietnam, to a village there, to collect information. His uncle gets involved in some really shady things and eventually dies. Skip is then blamed for his uncle's mistakes, and he escapes and disappears for several years, reappearing in 1983, and is captured for running guns in Malaysia. In the year 2009, he published Nobody Move. This is about a man named Jimmy Lutz. He's a gambler who owes money to a wannabe gangster. He ends up shooting one of the gangster's henchmen in the leg, who had been sent to rough him up. And then the story goes from there about Jimmy trying to escape from the mobster's retribution. In the year 2011, he published Train Dreams, and I think this is Johnson's masterpiece. This little tiny novella, really, but just an exceptional book. This follows the lonely life of a man named Robert Grenier. He's a logger and a laborer, but the story begins in 1893 when he's a small boy sent to live with a family in Idaho. And the story follows him throughout his life until his death. But it's just a really heartbreaking and depressing story, but just written so beautifully that in very sparse and lyrical prose. It's just a masterpiece in Johnson's writing. In the year 2014, he published The Laughing Monsters, and I had mentioned at the start that there was one book that I didn't like, and I have to tell you, this is it. It's by far his worst book. But this follows an American who, curiously, may also be a Dane. It doesn't really specify that. His name is Roland Nair, and he's gone to Africa to meet up with a friend of his, Michael Adrico, and they're going to become involved in a very confusing money-making scheme. Adrico has along with him his girlfriend Devedia, and he wants to take her to the village he's from that's near a mountain, Nuwada Mountain, and he wants to marry her there. And so the story goes into a very confusing and just strange story about them trying to get to the village. Enrico apparently doesn't even know where it's at times. But the story just goes from there into one confusing episode into another, and just spiraled into a kind of a incoherent mess as far as I was concerned. And the last book I have was published in 2018, The Largest of the Sea Maiden, and another just really exceptional short story collection. These are about mostly about the dark underbelly of society. Some of the stories I liked. The first is titled The Starlight on Idaho, and this follows a man named Mark Cassandra, and he's writing a series of letters to a whole variety of people from the Starlight Addiction Recovery Center. Another book or story titled Strangler Bob, and this is about a young man, about his time in jail when he was 18. And then another story titled Triumph Over the Grave. And this was written about the time, or I'm assuming about the time that Johnson was dying from cancer. And because at the closing of the story, he wrote, "The world keeps turning. It's plain to you that at the time I write this, I'm not dead, but maybe by the time you read it." I thought that was quite an exceptional line to put in. But those are the books I've read by Denis Johnson. Excellent writer, wrote some really fascinating and gritty stories. But anyway, I'd like to thank you for watching the video, and hopefully you'll watch another one. Thanks.